My dudes, yeah, what's happening, man? This is Trent. Today, we are talking about Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's right. This game is, well, now it's about probably 3, maybe 4 months old. And yeah, these are my impressions of it, man. It's going to be short and sweet. This game is a beast. I mean, in terms of the scope and the value of what you're getting, it is, I mean, I'm 65 hours in, and I wouldn't even say that I've really even scratched the surface or gotten to the main plot of the main story of the game. Well, I did everything. Like, I went 100% on the first small area, which is basically this area of Norway, I believe, where it's all snow covered and there's these incredibly cool glaciers covering rocky formations. And so, like, there's introduction to new features, new things that you've never seen in Assassin's Creed. You learn all about the new forms of navigation. Yes, you take fall damage now, for instance. Got to learn that. Also, when you go into icy cold water, your character, no matter how freaking badass he is or she is, you might freeze to death if you're under icy cold water for too long. You got to learn that. This whole first area is probably about 20 hours, maybe 15 to 20 hours to get 100% on it. Yes, this first area is kind of like, it's sort of like your ground zeros. It's where you get used to all the gameplay mechanics, you figure out how everything works. And the coolest things that they've added, I'm gonna continue to that list. So there's a lot more dialogue trees. It's not like, hey, you're choosing between two difficult things. It's not like, hey, I chose to save that guy so that this other thing could happen. Now, maybe that'll happen later in the game, but I haven't experienced that at all yet. I will say, beautiful graphics. I am playing it on the PS5. I should clarify that. I initially started on the PS4. Because who could get a PS5? And in fact, I know there are a lot of people out there that are still struggling, and I hate to add to your heartbreak, but it is glorious. If you can get it on the PS5, it does have a few enhancements, such as atmospheric fog and things like that I've noticed that are dramatically different. The frame rate is dramatically higher. The music is fantastic. They're not just going with that cinematic cliche thing. Man, you got like tribal chants going on, okay? The music alone almost makes this game a freaking spiritual experience, okay? Dudes, every time I pick up an Assassin's Creed, I'm like, fuck all the old ones. This is the one, okay? Ever since Black Flag, I would say. Black Flag really changed everything in terms of that open world sea voyage navigation where you could jump off and go and dig up pirate treasures or swim with the sharks and all that kind of stuff. This has that too, but it's a lot less focused on the seafaring aspect, even more so than Odyssey, I would say. Odyssey was huge oceans. This is a lot less of that ocean faring, and it's a little bit more of the rivers and fields of England so far. That's basically what I've been experiencing up to where I am in the story. However, there are some nifty things. Now, if you're not into spoilers, it's cool, brother. I got you covered because you see, I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free and keep it kind of vague. But I will say this. You don't just go to England. There are other locations as well. And some of these locations, well, let's just say that the Assassin's Creed series has dug a little bit more into the mythology aspects of these worlds that you go to. And they played around a little bit with that with Odyssey, where, yes, in Odyssey, you could go to Atlantis, for instance, and you could go to some of these mythical places and interact with mythical gods from that era. At least the Assassin's Creed versions in their mythos, in their mythos of how these gods or legends fit into the Assassin's Creed kind of lore, which is very creative and very interesting. There is not a lot of that bouncing between modern day and the past. There is some interesting like puzzle challenges, things that look like intentional glitches in the world. And if you find them, you have to navigate these kind of blue holographic puzzle kind of thing, leaping between holograms. Yay. Of course we want that. There is a little bit of intrigue there. I'm curious about what's going on in the modern day. I always am, probably more than a lot of other players are. I remember a lot of backlash to the Desmond Miles story, but I actually really liked the Desmond Miles story. I sometimes play all the way through these Assassin's Creed games just so that I can watch all the ending content, all that bonus content where they finally reveal what the heck it was all about. They get you with that, man. Ubisoft gives you a lot of content with your purchase. I can't believe that this game was like $60. I mean, with so much content, so many locations to visit, so many interesting fortresses to invade. Oh my God. Okay, dudes, when you're coming up in a river and you come around that little river bend and you got your Vikings with you and you get the option to raid a castle, it is a fucking awesome feeling running up on this castle at sunset with your hand-picked crew that you've recruited. You've been building out your town and recruiting, and you're now rushing up and raiding castles with these guys. The archers are blasting down on you. Your men are scaling the walls. It's epic, man, and it totally delivers. I feel like they need to be giving me a cut of the profits on this one. Because I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying this game. Probably the only complaint that I would have is that the game is just so freaking enormous. It's so big and there's so much going on, from the rap battles to the river raids to these side quests and potions that you take that take you to, other lands and things like that. There's like so much going on, and the map itself is pretty freaking huge. It's not as big as Odyssey, I would say, but there's more stuff going on within it. In fact, one of the gripes that I had about Odyssey was that they reused so many buildings that sometimes areas all felt the same. I get a lot less of that with Valhalla. Valhalla feels like there was a lot more crafted. I don't know if they just had a larger art team or if they just decided, well, maybe a little bit of a smaller world that's more custom. Like the first time that you get to London, it is so impressive seeing these massive trees, this castle basically built within this forest, this very dense, lush forest. The foliage throughout the whole world, it feels alive, it's swaying, it's moving, and there's so much more of it than in any other previous Assassin's Creed. Totally, this game wipes the freaking floor with any previous Assassin's Creed game, bar none. Some complaints, the complaints that I would have are going to be complaints that I'm going to have about any open world RPG. There is essentially a point at which you are so overpowered because you have so many unique abilities. And that is part of what keeps me playing, though. It's part of what keeps the world ever changing. It's like, yes, combat is always evolving and growing and changing because they did something very clever where, yes, as you level up, you kind of get access to new moves. And then you start working these new moves into your repertoire. And so before you know it, you're kind of like always exploring some new way to fight your enemies or some new way to distract enemies. So it kind of keeps it from getting too mundane. But ultimately, the enemies do end up just feeling like they're scaling with you a little bit. And sometimes it's like, why am I fighting this lion? It's literally taking 50 hits to kill this lion. It's just a freaking lion. I killed the same lion, 10 hours ago with 10 hits. Other things. This is my biggest gripe. Dudes. This is Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed. And yet your character can get an end game from simply killing too many civilians. Man, Vikings were just slaughtering the hell out of innocent folks left and right. They weren't the good guys. The Vikings weren't the good guys. Why are we trying to convince people that being a Viking is being a good guy? Oh, no. These Vikings are like super nice. Eivor is like a nice dude. He sounds kind of like he's a gentle soul, if you will. Well, let me tell you, Vikings were fierce, ferocious, monstrous warriors. These guys were savages. You needed to get a gruff voice actor is what I'm getting at. Like these Vikings should be hard, man. But instead they went all Ubisoft. That's a bad joke, but I'm going to keep it in there anyway. In some of the previous Assassin's Creeds, there was just so much gear, so many different weapons and items. I feel like with this, they did a pretty good job of giving you this like handful of items, a handful of weapons and gear, and you just keep leveling them up. So you create that reward for exploration and for doing side quests by giving you runes and other ways to enhance your existing armor sets. But they didn't just flood it with like a million different outfits and a million different things that the character could wear. Because like sometimes it's like, I already got a helmet that I like. I don't need to like pick up 5 more helmets. And if you're doing all these side quests and you're getting more helmets, it's like, I don't need that. I already got a helmet I like. So I actually really like how they handle that in this one. Okay, dudes, I'm gonna just basically call it like this. This one is pretty much right now, for the time being, my goatee. Now, this is not knowing whether or not Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 is coming out this year, not knowing whether or not there's going to be some, new Metal Gear or, there's a lot of rumors on the horizon. But right now, dudes, this one is my game of the year. This is my GOTY. Although I don't know if it qualifies because technically it came out in like December, I think. Either way, I'm going to say this, man. Like, pick this one up if you're at all interested in Assassin's Creed, if you're at all interested in open world RPGs, if you're at all interested in Vikings. Dudes, pick this bad boy up, man. I'm giving it like 9 and 9.5 pickles. 9.5 pickles. That's right at the top, man. It don't go much higher than that. All right, that's going to do it for me on this one. I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.